Call this meeting to order and ask for a moment of silence. Please be seated. I'd like to entertain a motion to reconvene an open session moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Jaworsky. All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Conflict of Interest Act? I actually have one. It is item number 13, and at that juncture, it was dealt with in closed session. I was not in the room. My son-in-law works for the company who is providing service to the region, and at that juncture, I will not vote on it, and I will ask Councillor Harris to take that portion of the meeting. So the first thing we have to do this morning is a great joy. This evening, today, it feels like a never-ending morning, but this is a bright spot. We have presentations, awards and recognition. I'd like to welcome all award recipients and their guests. And I have a letter of greetings provided by the Ontario Heritage Trust Board, which I would like to read at this point in time. And it says, "To your worship and members of Regional Council." That's why I'm reading it out loud, actually. "It is a pleasure to send greetings as part of your presentation at this council meeting to the individual and group receiving special recognition for their community and the Ontario Heritage Trust. We owe a great deal of gratitude to these volunteers who work tirelessly to keep our heritage alive and meaningful. By participating in the Trust's Lieutenant Governor's Ontario Heritage Awards and Young Heritage Leaders Program, your council has demonstrated appreciation for those who are taking a leadership role in heritage preservation. We have joined a growing number of municipalities from across Ontario in recognizing the significance of these contributions to the broader well-being of their community. I would like to congratulate Lawrence Lamb for receiving the Lieutenant Governor's Ontario Heritage Award for Lifetime Achievement for his active support of and advocacy for natural heritage conservation in Waterloo region. We also congratulate the students of Cameron Heights Collegiate Institute who volunteered at the Waterloo Wellington Children's Groundwater Festival and animated the interactive learning station there, for receiving the Young Heritage Leaders Awards. Heritage conservation is best undertaken and embraced at the community level. The act of coming together to protect buildings, natural sites, and cultural artifacts prompts the telling of stories to help define who we are and what it means to be an Ontarian. The contributions of people like Lawrence Lamb, who have served in the natural heritage conservation for over 40 years, and the 2018 Cameron Heights Collegiate Institute students who are beginning their journey, help to ensure the preservation of this legacy for future generations. On behalf of the Ontario Heritage Fund, it is my pleasure to extend our sincere thanks and congratulations to all those volunteers engaged in the work of heritage preservation. May their efforts inspire and motivate others to become involved, and may all of our communities be stronger as a result. Yours sincerely, Beth Hanna, Chief Executive Officer of the Ontario Heritage Trust. I'd like now to call on Kate Hagedorn, Manager, Environmental Planning and Sustainability, to provide remarks about the Ontario Heritage Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to introduce Lawrence Lamb, the recipient of the 2018 Ontario Heritage Lifetime Trust Heritage Lifetime Achievement Award. It seems like a lifetime. You can come and stand by me, Larry. That would be great. It seems like a lifetime since I met Larry in the UW Ecology Lab during my undergrad, and from a few years later when we spent time working together on restoration projects at the Stekely Heritage Homestead. Larry Lamb is a botanist and ecosystems restoration expert, as well as a well-known advocate for naturalizing gardens and landscapes. He has been an active supporter of natural heritage conservation within the region of Waterloo, the province, and beyond. Throughout his lifetime, Mr. Lamb has used his expertise and professional and community connections to influence the way natural heritage features were identified, valued, and protected. He also initiated a broad movement toward conserving, restoring, and recreating significant ecosystems through the initiation of conservation-focused organizations and by recreating showcase naturescapes, including ones in his own backyard. Locally, Larry drew upon his extensive knowledge and the region's flora and fauna and remnant natural areas to help identify the areas that would be designated as environmentally sensitive policy areas, ESPAs for short, by the region of Waterloo. And just to show you the results of the works that he did, there's over 93 ESPAs that have been designated and protected within the region of Waterloo. And Larry actually asked for an additional copy of this document to take home with him so he can continue to reference it when he visits the sites in the future. These were the first such municipally designated natural areas in the country and continue to be conserved through the region's official plan. Larry has always been meticulous in documenting and collecting and has donated his records and collections to public institutions so that they're available for future generations, including the numerous young professionals he's inspired through his teaching and community leadership. Larry Lamb has been a leader throughout his lifetime and inspired countless others to join him in continuing this important natural conservation work. Congratulations, Larry, on your lifetime of achievements, and thank you from all of us who have benefited from your hard work and dedication.
Well, thank you so much.
Congratulations, Larry. Would you like to say a few words?
Just a few words. I drafted a voluminous speech on a piece of paper 4x4, but I thank Honourable Chair, Regional Council members. You're a product of everybody you bump into, even casually. And I owe an awful lot of people thanks for being here tonight to get this award. And I've tried to leave the world, I'm still here though, a better place than it was. And you can see that. And I'd just like to close with, there's a lot more to measure prosperity than just housing units and jobs and money, the dollar. There are the birds, the butterflies, the wildflowers, the beautiful scenery, that kind of thing that we have to treasure as part of our lives. And I just want to really tell you that Waterloo Region is one of the showcase municipalities in Ontario. Thank you so much.
In a large part due to your efforts, Larry. Please join me in the center.
Thank you.
Kate?
Oh, no, I just wanted it for Elizabeth.
Larry, you may be interested to know that Councillor McGarry and I were celebrating a 10th anniversary with the Ancient Mariners Canoe Club and the fact that they're pollinators. And we were sort of conspiring that maybe we should try to see if we could make the region a bee city like Wellesley and Waterloo and Kitchener currently are. I'd now like to call on Sue Reid, Coordinator, Waterloo Wellington Groundwater Festival, to provide remarks about the Ontario Heritage Young Leaders Award recipients. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you for having us here this evening. I'm representing the Waterloo Wellington Children's Groundwater Festival, which hosted its 24th annual festival at the end of May, and I think some of you were able to get out, which was great. It wouldn't be able to happen without the Region of Waterloo support and many of our partners and sponsors that make it happen. to be able to engage our young audience of students in grade 2 to 5. And collectively, we have educated almost 100,000 students in the region. So that's good news. And we wouldn't be able to do it without the support of the region, so I thank you. This evening, we're here to say thank you as well to students that came out and volunteered. We rely on over 500 volunteers each year to be actively engaging our younger students and teaching them through very interactive hands-on learning. Since 2000, teachers and students from Cameron Heights have volunteered at the Groundwater Festival, and with the leadership of Cheri Drung and Chris Busch, who are here tonight. Unfortunately, we have no students tonight. Graduation and prom took precedent, so we can understand why they're not with us this evening. But without the hard work of the teachers and the students coming to the festival, we wouldn't be able to do it. They offer enthusiasm, and they're prepared for the day, which allows our young audience of elementary students an opportunity to interact with water and the environment. Our goal is to create a positive learning environment beyond the classroom, where students can be empowered to make changes in their homes, their communities, and their schools. We're raising the awareness of the next generation of water stewards. With the commitment from Cameron Heights, we're able to reach our goal. So I thank them, and I thank the students that came out this year to help out at the Groundwater Festival. So I'd like to introduce Cheri Drung and Chris Busch, the teachers from Cameron Heights.
Cheri and Chris, would you like to say a few words? Just a few.
I would just like to thank you for the honor that you've given to the students. So often when young people are in the media, it's not for good things. And yet, the students that we teach in the IB program at Cameron Heights are truly amazing individuals. And I'm sure that you will hear of many of them again in the media for many positive things that they will contribute to our region. We're very proud of them, and it's wonderful that they're being acknowledged for this. They were disappointed that they were not able to be here tonight. Right now, they are spit and polished and having their pictures taken at Rockway. The award will hang in the school, and I'm sure that it will be an incentive to future years to step up and contribute. Thank you.
So we'll get a picture, and I want to thank both of you for ditching the prom to come and spend some time with us.
I'm heading there after.
I'd now like to call on Craig Dyer, Chief Financial Officer and Commissioner of Corporate Services, to provide remarks on the Ontario Senior of the Year recipient. Welcome, Craig. I won't put you under fire for budget stuff right now.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm delighted to be here today to present this year's Ontario Senior of the Year Award. Each year, the Ministry of Citizen Immigration and International Trade allows each municipality to nominate one outstanding senior in their community. This award is given to someone over the age of 65 who has enriched the social, cultural, or civic life in his or her community. And I am very pleased to award this year's recipient, Mr. David Willmott, who is with us here today. Mr. Willmott retired as a senior manager from the manufacturing sector back in 2000 and started volunteering through the Canada Revenue Agency's Community Volunteer Income Tax Program. This was back in 2001. And of course, this program helps low-income residents complete their income tax returns. The region of Waterloo then inherited David as a volunteer from the CRA in 2008 when the region took over responsibility for the program. So David has volunteered his services to numerous energy agencies during the tax season. And so I had to read this a couple of times to make sure it was right. He completes, I've got two numbers here, two sets of books, I suppose. Somewhere between 1,100 and 1,500 tax returns annually.
Wow.
Right. That's how I reacted. There's a time for, as an accountant, I can say there's a time for precision. This is definitely not it. So I'm going to use the 1,500 number instead of the 1,100 number and round up his 19 years to 20 years and suggest that Mr. Willmott has completed somewhere in the range of 25 to 30,000 tax returns since he started volunteering. He's a resident of Kitchener, but for 2 or 3 days a week during tax season, he makes the trip at his own expense to 150 Main to provide these drop-in tax clinic services. The income tax system has become an increasingly important source of financial support to low-income individuals and families, and the significance of filing taxes has become more and more important for residents to access these most important benefits. Mr. Willmott has made the community a better place by volunteering his skills and services, and I would suggest that he epitomizes one of the region's values, in particular the value of service, as he understands the need and continues to give back to his neighbours. So congratulations, Mr. Willmott.
David, would you like to say a few words?
Just a few. I think the first thing I'd like to thank the Chair and the Council for this award. I don't do it for that. I do it to help the people who can't afford the $100 or whatever that would be necessary to pay to have their taxes done. But to do that, I need the support of the region, and I appreciate the support for the space and the facilities that the region have offered in terms of an office at both 150 Main and 235 King. It's also the staff at the ERA centres, the employment resource areas, who do all the scheduling and all those number of people for me, both the scheduling and also when I'm in there guiding them through. That is not an easy task for them. It's on top of their normal duties and it's appreciated. There's also the community centres like Sunnydale in Waterloo, Chandler Mowat in Kitchener and Lang's Farm in Cambridge, where those coordinators also offer that service for their taxes for their residents of those communities. And that's, from my point of view, I appreciate the help they give me to perform that task. The numbers are not important. It's what you basically get the people where they need additional revenue that is available to them without them costing anything out of their own pocket to get it. So once again, thank you for the award. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Please come for a picture. So I would like to just commend and thank all of the award recipients for your many contributions to this community, and thank your guests for attending this special evening, and also offer you the opportunity to stay for our scintillating council meeting. If you want to leave now, you may, but I'd like to leave you with one quote. It's not attributed by anyone. It's that famous sage Anonymous that wrote it. But he said, volunteering is the ultimate exercise in democracy. You vote in elections once a year, but when you volunteer, you vote every day about the kind of community you want to live in. Thank you for creating such an amazing community for all of us. So now back to our agenda, colleagues. We have 2 delegations, and this has to do with the planning work summary, the Kissing Trail. And the first person who's registered is Greg Michalenko. Welcome, Greg. You could go over to the mic and we'll turn it on and you'll be picked up on the live streaming, and you have 5 minutes.
Is it on now? Okay. I represent the Grand River Environmental Network. It's a small group, but we concentrate on policy issues, and we feel that we can be of assistance in supporting what we feel are necessary actions to protect the environment in its widest sense in Waterloo region. I'd like to commend the region for having had the foresight a number of years ago to enter into arrangement with the provincial government to develop the 44 kilometers of the 150 kilometers of the Guelph to Lake Huron. Yeah, to Godrich on Lake Huron. It was good foresight. I lived in Switzerland for a number of years, and one thing that was wonderful about that country was it had trails all over the countryside, and it developed a very good cooperative spirit between landowners, the rural communities, and the gung-ho Swiss that were always out hiking. Here we have fewer trails, but we are developing some, and it would be a great tragedy if we were to lose this one. Albert Hoving has prepared, I think, a very good report, and this will provide you with a basis for ensuring that this trail is maintained as a public amenity. The trail's really popular. I just did a random survey the last few days of any cyclists I ran across and asked if they knew of the trail. About 2/3 did. Had they ever used it? About 1/3 did. Were they concerned that it might be lost? Some of them were angry, others very worried. So it means something to them. There are also lots of hikers that use the trail. I went online to see what evidence there is of what the trail means to people. It's quite amazing. There are 3 Lions clubs that are connected with managing it. The Tin something or other triathlon competition in Elmira each year uses the trail for its cycling portion. The Blythe Festival, because it used to be the rutabaga capital of Canada, has an 8-foot inflatable rutabaga, and for a publicity photo, they went out to the trail and put it up on it and took a photo. There's the Dr. I've forgotten the name now, something or other, memorial competition of some sort each year that involves a trail, and the money goes to a good cause. And there are fundraising dinners all over the place in the 13 communities along it. So Waterloo region, I think, can take pride in having been the first to have the idea of developing the trail, and now the others are falling into place. It's a word of caution. I'm a little worried that provincial government ideology favoring private ownership over public amenities may be occurring here. It's declared as surplus property, and there may be intentions of selling it to adjoining private landowners. If that happens, fences will go up, and this will be lost forever. This has happened before. I come from Saskatchewan, and one of the most the loveliest things there is the community pastures. In the 1930s, under the Prairie Farm Rehabilitation Act, 68 large areas of natural heritage or untillable land was put under federal government ownership and called community pastures. So a farmer without adequate pasture could put some cows on at 10 cents a head per day. And they were very happy. The conservationists and bird lovers like me loved it because these were the prime areas and they were protected. And the hunters got to shoot grouse and deer in the fall. Prime Minister Harper, stating a belief that ownership of land should be private and not public, privatized those 68 areas of prime habitat, and now that they've been lost as a public amenity, and a public amenity that worked very well. So I caution you that you may be facing something of the same nature here. And I also would like to suggest that the current arrangement represents a perfectly working conservative model of government-community relationships. The province retains a benevolent interest as landowner. The region and counties cooperate through a lease. The trail is managed and developed by a collection of wonderful public associations, and a host of volunteers do the work each year and also do fundraising. The arrangement is accountable. There's a governing board with local representatives, and it produces an annual report. It's a beautiful setup, and I thank you for defending it.
Thank you very much. I don't see anybody with questions, but we share your sentiment, and we certainly will go to bat for keeping the Guelph to Goderich Kissing Bridge Trail intact. Roger Suffling? Welcome, Roger. You too have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of Council. I'm here representing Kitchener Easy Riders. We're a cycle club for those over 55. We have 250 plus members with a capped membership. We cycle for fun and as part of an environmental ethic. And we would strongly urge you to support the continuation of the trail. Our members use the trail regularly, and we feel very, very strongly about it being dismembered. I came home last night from Quebec, where I'd been cycling in the Granby area, and was shocked to find that this was mooted, this idea of breaking up the trail. So any remarks here are put together on the fly in the last few hours. We commend Council for bringing forward the idea of retaining the trail, and we ask you to vigorously defend the trail. Even loss of one segment could be disastrous. For instance, on the trail from Listowel to Palmerston, some of the land was sold off at Gowenston. There's a house there and a junkyard, and the junkyard owner has vigorously tried to block access to the trail. And so people moving from Listowel to Palmerston turn around at that point. They get very frustrated, and it's Palmerston's economic loss as a result. In this presentation, I'd like to stress the economic benefits of the trail. With our 250 members, we're just one of many, many clubs in the province. When we go out for 3 or 4 days cycling, we can rent up to 40 hotel rooms. We drop a pile of money. It's an economic matter. The trails also have other economic potential, for instance, for fiber optics, for a pipeline, in this case, was mooted along the route of this trail at one point, and it might come back again. Now, I'd like to look at the slides here from Quebec. This is a view of the Estriade Trail in the Eastern Townships. It has been vigorously promoted by the local council, by the province, which has a magnificent system of trails. I have to say it's much better than Ontario's. And this particular trail gets 400,000 users a year. When we were there a couple of days ago, it was humming. You had to stop on the trail sometimes, there were so many users. And not just cyclists, but people in motorized wheelchairs, skateboarders, and in-landscape users and so on. The trail there has attracted federal money that has been invested, and it's a real plus for the community. There's a lot of artwork. There is a huge sense of community pride, and certainly you can see a level of fitness in the users that you don't see in the usual population. It's tremendous. It's fun. It's really a great place to go. And the thing about the Guelph to Goderich Trail, it's in an embryo form, but it has the potential to do the same thing. In the Niagara region, cyclists drop on average $148 per night when they stay, and 52% of cyclists using the region stay one or more nights. Some of them stay several nights. This is an economic engine. It's not just a recreation thing, it's economics, it's money, it's bucks. We were in a cafe adjacent to the trail, and this is a few nights ago. It was absolutely humming. People are spending money. It's keeping the town afloat as its traditional industries are not too healthy. Also, when you've got a facility like this in the region, people coming to get tech jobs here, they look at the quality of life. They look at things like, can I go out riding a trail? And it's important. And this is what people use to make decisions about whether to come here from California or France or England or wherever, China. And so I can't emphasize this or repeat it too much. This is a money spinner. Look after it, protect it vigorously. And I would say you've got a slogan here, which is keep the Guelph to Goderich Trail open for business. If that's what the province is interested in, stick it to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suffling. I see no questions, but we too, oh, hang on. There's all kinds of questions now. Councillor McGarry.
Thank you very much. I couldn't be happier to hear you come up to the podium to talk about the Guelph to Goderich Trail, 127 kilometers in length, Kissing Bridge Trail, about 45 kilometers. And you hit so many of the high points of this, including the cycling aspect. Cycling is actually the fastest growing tourism in the sector of fitness and sports. So I'm absolutely delighted to see that people have come out to support this. With over almost 25 years of planning and so many municipal governments, including the provincial government, coming to support this trail, how effective do you think you've been in mobilizing not just this community, but along the entire trail, people that will come out and advocate to their local MPPs and to the provincial government about what a jewel in Ontario this is?
I can't really speak to your question because I'm not part of the Guelph to Goderich organisation. You would have to ask them, but they have been very vigorous with respect to that. And our club has been in the region and in the city of Kitchener. One of the things that you mentioned there really struck a chord with me, and that was the idea that cycling is growing so fast in the province. We have an ageing population, and people like to keep fit. And there's a piece of technology on the move here, which is the e-bike. E-bike sales are going up exponentially, and it's enabling older people to take up cycling or keep cycling, and they're spending money.
Well, thank you so much for your advocacy, and just to keep it going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roger, I'm going to have to ask you to come back. Councillor Galloway has a question.
No.
No, or it's a comment, sorry.
No, I want to bring the item forward.
Okay.
I want to bring the item forward. So, Madam Chair, I would move that the Region of Waterloo request that this is item 9 on the planning work summary, that we request the province of Ontario pause the disposition process for Guelph to Goderich Trail lands, including the Kissing Bridge Trail lands, and ensure that the corridor remains in public or not-for-profit ownership for public use. And B, consider a longer-term lease when the Region of Waterloo renegotiates through the renewal of the Kissing Bridge Trail lease to provide for greater certainty and to facilitate long-term planning and investment for infrastructure improvements along the Kissing Bridge Trail, and that Regional Council accept the 21st annual report of the Kissing Bridge Trailway Advisory Board for information.
So that's moved by Councillor Galloway, seconded by Councillor Jaworsky. Anyone wish to speak to it? All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Galloway. So I'm going to turn to the minutes of previous meetings. You have them listed before you, A through H. We can take them in one motion if we so choose. Councillor Kiefer is moving it. Councillor Jowett seconding it. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Communications, Council received information Friday, June 21st. It was distributed electronically. Are there any questions about the information you received? I will entertain a motion to go into the Committee of a Whole to consider reports. Moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Clark. All those in favor? That is carried. Next, we have finance reports. There's one sole source type 3 ambulance from Demers. Could I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Galloway. Councillor Harris.
Sorry, didn't get the finger on the trigger quick enough here. I noticed in the report T 2019-154, the Morningside I guess wastewater upgrades. Noticed there was a couple bidders and there was a large disparity between the two. Just wondering, if that is in fact in line with the budget. There was some breakdowns over different fiscals, and I'm just wondering, if there's an explanation for that potentially. Somebody. 420.
Mr. Dyer, do you want to answer that?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, I understand that the lower bid was in line with what was anticipated. So, despite, as you say, the significant disparity between the two bids, staff are confident that the work can be done at that price.
And the budget for it? The budget for that particular project was.
Yep. So just looking at page 32, definitely sufficient funds in both in 2020 rather to in order to complete the work.
All right. Okay. Thanks.
Councillor Harris, do you have further questions?
No, I'm good with that. If he's good, I'm good.
Sorry, I'll try to be less expeditious. So I would entertain a motion to move all the financial recommendations. Moved by Councillor Lorentz, seconded by Councillor McGarry. So these are the recommendations through to A through J. Are there any questions? All those in favor? Opposed of any? That is carried. So we had an additional late starter. It's Public Transit Infrastructure Funding Amending Agreement. It's in the finance reports. That is additional in the consolidated agenda. Could I have a mover for that? Have we all found it? Moved by Councillor Lorentz, seconded by Councillor Jowett. Questions? Has everybody found it? It's page 41A on your consolidated agenda. Seeing no speakers, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Committee reports. Ask Councillor Galloway, Planning and Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move the remaining 9 items on the Planning Works Committee summary and add to that an item from an earlier caucus meeting today. It's the a settlement agreement for a piece of land on 311 Shantz Hill Road in Preston.
Do I have a seconder for those motions? Moved by Councillor Jowett. All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Jowett, would you like to move the Finance and Admin on page 45?
I would, the two. I'm sorry, but I cannot open up my screen again so quickly because it freezes. Maybe that'll be a motion someday to have it stay open a little longer. Thank you. Do you want me to, that the regional municipality of Waterloo update the region's target reserve and reserve fund contributions amounts as set out in Appendix A, B, and report as noted. And the second is that regional municipality of Waterloo take the following action with respect to the 2020 budget as set out in the report COR FSD 1934 dated June 18th. And the 3 directions are there. Do you want me to read them all out, or are we good?
No, I think we're good, but
Okay.
thank you for giving us the highlights. Moved by Councillor Jowett, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Clark, Community and Services.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I move the 4 recommendations from the Community Services Committee, being the submission to the Ministry of Education of the Early Learning and Childcare Services Update, the increases to the Children's Services operating budget and the addition of a temporary staff position, and the increase to fees, and the submission to the Ministry of Training, Colleges and Universities of the expression of interest. And I will also move a recommendation from closed council that the Regional Municipality of Waterloo approve the offer to lease entered into between the region and 1463184 Ontario Limited, being the owner, dated June 18, 2019, to lease the premises municipally known as 150 Duke Street West in the city of Kitchener for the provision of consumption treatment services.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Lorentz. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So the next item is proposed amendment to the 2019 development charge bylaw concerning brownfield exemptions, and I'm going to ask the clerk to speak to it.
So just on your consolidated agenda tonight, you will not see the summary of recommendations from the RDC committee that was sent out to you on Monday and is actually posted to the web. So the summary that you got on Monday was not included in your consolidated package this evening, but is in front of Councillor Strickland and is in front of Chair Redman at this point in time. So there were some amendments between Friday's release of the agenda and Monday when you received an addendum or an update to that actual recommendation. It's not included in your consolidated, but we do have it available if you want to see it. Yes, we can do that.
Councillor Strickland, would you like to move this and speak to it?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there's 2 things that I need to do. One is move the recommendations on page 49. And is that what you're referring to, Chris? Is that?
So the original page 49 that was in the original agenda that went out on Friday was not looking in this way.
Right.
for Monday, and it was reposted,
Okay,
but it was not included in your consolidated agenda
all right.
tonight.
So you're going to put the one up there with the sub-clauses and subsections and so on as per our committee meeting? Whereas the one in our agenda is numbered 1 to 30 or something, so that's what was kind of confusing, and that's why we had a quick huddle beforehand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the recommendations from the Special Admin and Finance Committee to deal with development charges on 49, and then we're also going to deal with the recommendation of 51A in our consolidated, and 51F, which was the appendix related to the recommendation of 51A. So if I can just speak to 49 that's going up on the screen momentarily. So, every 5 years we have to do a background study and amend our development charges, change the bylaw. And so the highlights of this bylaw are that we're increasing the rates for residential and non-residential. We're also approving a 60% discount for non-residential development related to qualifying industrial development. We're also approving a 50% discount on non-residential development related to new office development in urban growth centers in excess of 20,000 square feet. And we're also approving a regional development charge exemption for downtown core areas in the City of Cambridge, provided a similar exemption is provided by the City of Cambridge's bylaw department, or by their own bylaw, rather. So also, we're going to amend the Brownfield incentive program. And there's various changes in there with respect to amending the Brownfield incentive program, and also including the amendment that we passed at the special A&F committee, grandfathering in, which would be section G, subsection 2, clause C, that is grandfathering in those developments that would be eligible for a brownfield if they have certain criteria and a form submitted to staff by July 31st, 2019, before the current bylaw expires. So we're grandfathering in those applications we received before July 31st, 2019 to apply for the brownfield exemption. And if they meet the criteria, they'll be eligible for the funding as per the current bylaw. Those that come in after July 31st, the new bylaw will apply. And so those are the highlights for the recommendations from the Special Admin and Finance Committee. And once we approve those, then we'll move to 51A, which is the enabling recommendation to allow for the grandfathering.
I would remind council that after our special finance and administration meeting, specifically about this issue, we asked staff to go away and come back with wording, which is why it feels like it's just-in-time delivery. So that is, so Councillor Strickland, you're moving the summary of recommendations at this point as well as 51A, or you'll wait and do 50?
I'll wait. Well, I think we have to move this first.
Okay.
And then we have to do the enabling.
So it's seconded by Councillor Kiefer and Councillor Harris.
So I'm assuming we're going to vote on the entire block. Is that what we're going to do?
That was going to be my intention, unless you want one taken out.
Just, I did want to note for the record, I suppose, and ask that if you could go back up to the top, that the residential rate, I guess it would be 2A.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'd be separated out. I mean, I did vote against that particular item, and I guess I just wanted to state for the record that a 36% increase on the residential rates is frankly higher than what I would have liked to have seen, and I wanted to make sure I state that for the record, I suppose.
Okay, so I'm going to assume I'm going to ask the mover and the seconder, but we'll move all of the consolidated summary of recommendations except 2A at this point. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried, and we'll now move, and again, I would look to the mover and seconder. We're going to take 2A. All those in favor? Opposed? Would you like to be noted as such?
Sure. Thank you.
Councillor Harris is opposed. That is carried. Thank you. Now back to Councillor Strickland.
Okay, thank you, Madam Thank you, Madam Chair. So on page 51A of the consolidated, there's a recommendation there indicating that we amend the bylaw that we essentially just passed, section 17.2, to set out this procedure that would be related to the grandfathering. And the attachment on 51G is really the enabling process for the grandfathering. Okay? So I would move that, Madam Chair.
Seconded by Councillor Vrbanovic. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. There also is an additional amendment, 51G1, and this is from the Economic Development Committee, which dealt with some grants, and we dealt with this directly before this meeting. Could I have a mover? Councillor Jowett, Councillor Jaworsky. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. The next agenda item is appointments to the Waterloo Regional Heritage Foundation. And there was a recommendation for those. Councillor Galloway.
Madam Chair, no, I wanted to back up just to the to the Brownfield exemptions. I support what we did, but there's some very significant financial consequences and costs associated with that. And I'm wondering if what Mr. Murray or Mr. Dyer believes we should be doing in terms of any kind of strategy, longer-term strategy to deal with the costs. The numbers are very significant, although of course they're over time. They're not today, but a significant amount of money in these difficult times. It seems to me what we should either roll that into some other strategy or make it part of our overall look at the budget, or whether or not we need, as we did with the development charge exemptions, create a separate strategy.
Mr. Dyer, would you like to speak to this?
We don't need an answer necessarily, but whether or not we need a strategy, or whether or not we should just roll it into general discussion.
Mr. Dyer?
I think through you, Madam Chair, excuse me, the short answer is we need a strategy. And staff will be starting to work on that, I think, in earnest through July and August as we head into the 2020 budget deliberations. And you're right, there's some uncertainty with respect to both the timing of certain developments and what some of the costs might be. So we need to put some time into quantifying what we think the impact would be, understanding the timing issues, and put a strategy together that we can bring back in front of A&F committee.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Galloway, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm assuming there'll be bake sales and car washes and other things included in it.
Roll up your sleeves.
It is a consider impact, absolutely. Seeing no other speakers, I'm going to move on to appointments to Waterloo Regional Heritage Foundation. You see that recommendation written before you.
I'll move it.
Councillor Galloway. So it's John Klinkett, Bob Oberholzer, Heather Rennie for 1 year, David Emerly, Lindsay Haggerty, and Julie Lewis for a 2-year term, and John Glass and Crystal Osborne for 3 years. I have a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor McGarry. Any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. The next item is under matters of the Committee of the Whole, and this is a motion that I have a conflict of interest, so I'm going to turn the meeting over to my designated chair for this month, Michael Harris.
Okay. And that is a non-page. I'm just following
Oh,
along.
sorry, it is on page 52.
I'm just a bit of ahead of this myself. 65.
Doesn't have a 52.
On the consolidated agenda.
But I'll move it.
It's on the,
Well, yeah, can I ask that it be moved? Yeah. Tom moved it. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Lorentz. Councillor Galloway moved. Councillor Lorentz, seconder. All in favor? Passed. There you go.
well done, Councillor Harris. And I think I just gave away my page. Next recommendation is on page 60, and it's the funding of the community-wide cannabis education campaign from the cannabis funds received from the province. There's a recommendation before you. Are we all on the same page? Recommendation is that we approve the use of up to $50,000 from the money received from the Ontario Cannabis Legalization Implementation Fund for a comprehensive community-wide cannabis education campaign that focuses on safer cannabis use to Waterloo Region residents and community partners as outlined in the report PDL-CAS-19-06 dated June 26, 2019. Moved by Councillor Kiefer, seconded by Councillor Lorentz. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. Any opposed? Okay, that is carried. Next is a Audit and Accountability Fund report. I'm going to ask Mr. Murray to speak to this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just make a few comments. This matter was at Council a couple of weeks ago, and at that point, Council struck a steering committee that included members of the Audit Committee, plus Councillor Harris and Councillor Foxton. The steering committee met to talk primarily about the scope of the project that we would apply for. And so the scope that the steering committee has recommended is described in the report. And I would characterize it as essentially updating the service review that the region undertook in 2015. So that will involve updating what are called service profiles. They talk about each of the 100+ services the region provides. It categorizes all our services into services that are mandatory, discretionary, or somewhere in between. It also looks at the level of spending on each of our programs and services and sort of characterizes them as, at about equivalent to our peers, below that or above that, and ones that are above it, the question is, why are we spending more? Is it because of policy decisions that the region has made historically? So I think the view of the steering committee and staff actually is that updating these service profiles and getting this list of mandatory versus discretionary programs and sort of level of spending will actually be a helpful input into the 2020 budget process, because council may have some very difficult decisions that it has to deal with, and updating the service review, I think, will provide helpful information for council as you deal with those difficult decisions, which frankly I think got a little bit more difficult about 3 minutes ago.
So the recommendation before you is to take the following action with respect to the Audit and Accountability Fund is set out in the report from June 26, and it's prepare and submit an application to the Province of Ontario's Audit and Accountability Fund, and to waive the procurement bylaw provisions in order to undertake expedited consultative selection process, including sole source selection, if and as required to the satisfaction of the Chief Financial Officer. And I have Councillor Harris. Do you want to move it?
Yes, I would like to move it. I just want to comment that from our subcommittee, I believe the staff have captured our comments in our meeting, I think, accurately, and I look forward to the results of this study.
Councillor Jaworsky, are you seconding it? Absolutely. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. You also have in your package for information an update on consumption and treatment service planning on page 80. Councillor Lorentz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to make a few brief comments if I could, and I want to thank staff for this report. I know it was kind of a late starter and it was sitting on our desk when we got here, but I'm glad to see that we're moving forward with an interim site, hoping to have it up by the end of the summer. I think that's really important. I think a lot of the information that's in here is really lessons learned from other sites and other municipalities, and I appreciate that. So we're forming a community advisory group with the neighborhood associations, with the municipality, police, the BIA, and I think that was the kind of model that they used at South Riverdale, and I agree with that. We're formulating a code of conduct, which I think is really important, and we're going to have groups doing patrols early mornings for needles and hot spots, and those are all great lessons that we've learned from other municipalities who have done that. And I think the most important piece on this is the criminal activity, great buy-in by our police services, and there'll be no nonsense on these sites. You know, if you're caught doing something, you're banned, you don't come back. So I think it's a good read, and I look forward to us moving forward. I noticed that we haven't received approval from our federal application, but that's pending, and I think that's important that we have that. So again, thank you, staff, for putting this together, and I wish you good luck on this long, hot summer coming up. Thank you.
Karen Quigley-Hobbs, would you like to comment on this report now that you've got this glowing review?
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lorentz. I think the councillor gave a very good overview of what is in the report. I, as well, would like to draw your attention to the two-part approach to the community advisory group. This will allow us to action the involvement of the community a bit faster for the interim site, recognizing that we would have a more a broader strategy to provide us with input on the permanent site. As well, in terms of plan security, there is a fine balance between ensuring the service is welcoming and supportive for those using the service, as well as the safety of the clients, staff, neighbors, and community. There are a number of initial strategies that are outlined in the report. And as Councillor Lorentz pointed out, the report also includes police services. In closing, we're committed to a robust communication approach with a defined path for key stakeholder groups to ensure that everyone feels informed of the progress. And when Council meets in August, Public Health will be back to provide another update on the progress and status of the service.
Thank you very much. And it is a very comprehensive report. I see no further comments. Motion for the Committee of the Whole to rise and...
It wasn't.
Councillor Vrbanovic.
Apologies, sorry, thank you very much. Just with respect to the security plan, my real only question, and this overall is a good report, I just want to make sure that the intention is that we will have security personnel on site during operating hours, and maybe, you know, in the initial period, maybe even before and after those hours. And as we come to understand how things might evolve, then we'll look at sort of maybe withdrawing some of it, particularly in after hours, and using cameras is what I'm understanding. And I just want to make sure that that's the case.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to look around. I don't see any other people asking to speak. A motion for the Committee of Whole to rise and for Council to resume, moved by Councillor Strickland, seconded by Councillor McGarry. All those in favor? That is carried. I need a motion to adopt the proceedings of the Committee of the Whole, moved by Councillor Jowett, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? That is carried. Any notices of motion? Any unfinished business? Other business? Yeah. I thought Dave was going to beat Tom, but Tom was in there first. Councillor Galloway?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I just wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge and thank the staff for the launch event of light rail transit. It was a smashing success in terms of the launch, no pun intended, but for the launch event itself. But keep in mind that the launch really was 3 days, or it's 11 days of free service. There were hundreds of regional staff who volunteered their time at various stations as ambassadors across the entire system, and it all went very, very well. And I've spent a couple minutes on the trains. And
how many rides have you had, Councillor Galloway?
Well, don't worry about it. I sleep in the cab at the end of the train. So. But the comments from the public are universally positive, and particularly note the ambassadors on the platforms that help people navigate. It's been very crowded, which is a really nice problem to have, but that has caused a lot of pressures on the system. And the comments have been very, very positive. But I do want to particularly note the launch event was well attended. It was very well run. We were in fact slightly ahead of schedule, which is not bad. And we did get off to our first train before the end of spring, as planned, with 14 minutes to spare. And my final 3 words are, Councillor McGarry? Onward to Cambridge. That's right, onward to Cambridge.
I would just like to add my gratitude to current and past members of council and the previous chair for their vision in going forward. I don't ever think I've seen Mr. Murray smile more broadly than he did that day. And also to point out that there's been a lot of interest and patience in the public when we've gone from a hub and spoke bus service from GRT to a grid service that now feeds the spine, which is the ION. And I think the public are really welcoming the fact that we have become a world-class city, even though we didn't grow. Maybe we just puff our chests out just a little higher. Mr. Murray and I had an opportunity to meet a gentleman from Wales who is looking at a similar model, and he was very impressed with what we've accomplished. Mr. Murray, do you want a couple words to say about the ION?
Oh, heck. No, I think I said just about everything I wanted to on during the launch event on Friday. And I'd echo actually what Councillor Galloway and Chair Redman said, which is we had an event last night for regional staff and partners who've worked on it, and it was really well attended. And it was an opportunity for me to thank the whole team, because it has been an incredible team effort. There have been hundreds of regional staff involved over probably a 15-year period, and people from all parts of the organization. And that was a feeling in the room last night, is that everybody had played their part, and that's how great teams work. And I think that applies to regional staff and regional council as well. It's been a great team effort. Staff have played a good role, and I think council has too. So my great thanks and gratitude to all of you.
Top that, Councillor Jaworsky.
Well, thank you very much. I, too, over the past few days, have been playing Waterloo Region's biggest game craze, spot Tom Galloway on the LRT. And I was doing it with my bike, as you heard earlier from the delegates. I think it was Greg and Roger mentioned, people are all about biking on the trails and that. And so I think they said some of the older people are now getting into e-bikes. And as I begin to this year to enjoy all the benefits being 55 plus that are out there, I purchased myself an e-bike. Very proud of it. Took the LRT on Monday morning when bikes were first allowed, only to find out from the cycling community that technically they're not allowed on the ION, and that anything that's motorized and that isn't. But I think the common sense here is that if it looks like a bike, smells like a bike, it's kind of okay. So I'd like to get clarity from staff on how we might be able to improve that for the ION, and I know Nancy and I have chatted about it earlier.
So, Nancy, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the GRT and the ION, they would like to support active transportation. And for the ION, as you stated, single-seated, two-wheel, non-motorized bikes are what's allowed and what's on the website. In conferring with Thomas, he indicated that if it looks like a regular bicycle, then it probably would not be a problem. However, for the GRT, the story is a little bit different because the bike rack has a front weight restriction. And e-bikes, they can be heavy. And so it may have an impact. So staff are committed to updating the policy with timing to report back in September.
Wonderful news. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to hear that you're staying healthy, Councillor Jaworsky. Just a note of business from me. I had the opportunity to hold my first Regional Chairs Community Roundtable this past week. It was wonderful. Basically, it was 15 people who applied at random to come and speak about issues that they were concerned about, issues that they may not have the opportunity to delegate and come and talk to council. I had Councillor Erb and Councillor Galloway join me. It was very fruitful, very interesting. Social housing, transportation, issues for seniors came up, and that will certainly inform my thinking as I go ahead, but it was a great first event, and I look forward to having the 2 more before the end of the year. It was the one and only promise I made when I ran in the last election as regional chair, and it was very gratifying to hear the candor that came from citizens right across the region. So that's my other business. Any questions? I would entertain a motion to enact bylaws first, second, and third readings. Moved by Councillor Strickland, seconded by Councillor McGarry. All those in favor? Now I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Harris, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, colleagues.